All right, everyone, welcome back to Talking Soccer. I'm your host, Justin Horniker, again coming to you from the St. Louis studio. Obligatory apologies for the lighting. We'll be back in KC soon after Monday's U.S. game. Let's talk a bit about what happened in today's Women's Super League matches, and then, of course, let's preview tomorrow's Qatar, Ecuador World Cup kickoff from the totally not problematic Qatar, from a totally... Journalists are fine. Everyone's fine. Everything's good. Everything's going to go well. It's okay that 2 days before the start of the World Cup, they pulled alcohol sales. It's okay that most of the things that they promised weren't actually there. It's okay that journalists are getting threatened to have their cameras taken away and destroyed. It's all right. None of that is a problem. Infantino says that it's actually our fault for drawing so much criticism against another country. So take that into consideration. It's actually your fault when you're watching this. So keep that in mind. But first, let's talk about the Women's Super League. Today we had Manchester United taking off against Arsenal and Everton against Man City. Some big league-shaping matchups. Of course, Manchester United lost to Chelsea before the break, and that really seemed like it was signifying that Arsenal and Chelsea were kind of separating themselves from the rest of the Super League. But today's results mean that you kind of have a four-team pack. City's a little bit underneath, I think, both talent-wise and in what you've seen, and maybe things will change once they get those Chelsea, Arsenal, United games come back around. But I think there is a clear delineation from the rest of the league, Man City, and then those Champions League spots of United, Chelsea, and Arsenal. And I think Arsenal have been the best team in Europe so far. They had not lost a home game for sure, and see them kind of and this was a very competitive game. It was a very back and forth game. But to see them kind of take the loss and be exposed in their set-piece defending, I think is important, and important for the rest of the league going forward. But first, let's talk about that Man City-Everton game, because I thought that was also important for Man City. Securing their spot in that top four, separating themselves from all the teams beneath us. There's a nice little gap in the table now, and Man City will surely want to attack those top three spaces for sure. Manchester City seemed to be in the driver's seat of this game from the start, even though if Everton did make things difficult for them. It was not an easy game for Manchester City, even though possession-wise and possession-driving-wise, they looked like the much better team. Of course, led by Bunny Shaw and Julie Blakstad, they were really immense this game. That front three for Manchester City was hard to deal with for Everton, and that's where you really get that clear delineation of throughout the Women's Super League. I think what sets City apart from the rest of the teams underneath them is just how important Bunny Shaw and Julie Blakstad have been for them all season long, but especially in games like this where you need a player to really step up and take the game over. That's where your otherworldly talent comes in and takes over the game. So for that first goal, Bunny Shaw sets up Julie Blakstad by completely drawing the goalkeeper out, sliding it over to a late running blast that he just puts in. The easiest tap-in you're ever going to get to make it Man City 1, Everton 0. Everton were able to come back relatively quickly, though, off a corner kick. Maclver kind of misplays it. It bounces around a bunch. Eventually, it gets credited to Sevecke, but it was really hard to tell. There's a lot happening inside the box here, and chaos in the box, I think that's just what you want, right? It doesn't matter how that ball goes in. What matters is that ball did go in. So, 1-1 going into the half. It would not last long into the second half, though, as Bunny Shaw knocks back a deflected wonder strike off the inside of the post. Laura Coombs kind of sets up. Man, this is a freaking phenomenal strike from Laura Coombs, kind of a few feet outside of the corner of the box. Really rockets it, and it should have been a goal, but hits off the inside of the post, hits off the keeper. Bunny Shaw is right there to put it back. 2-1 Manchester City, and that is how it ends. Manchester City did a good job of really controlling the game from there. It was, I don't want to say easy for them, obviously, any 2-1 game, but Man City deserved to win this from possession stats, from just how they really dominated the play of the game. That 2-1 win, that 1-goal win is very well deserved, and like I said, sets them kind of above that third tier of teams. they're kind of in no man's land. They need to, do something to really climb up that ladder to jump into the top three. But for now, they've kind of separated themselves from the rest. But speaking of that top three, Manchester United win 3-2 against the previously undefeated at home Arsenal. You have goals from Ella Toone, Frida Magnum to make it 1-1. Laura Weinroither makes it 2-1 for Arsenal. That was crazy. So let's kind of talk about the run of play before we get into that next sequence of goal. Manchester United looked like, I was actually very surprised. I thought that they had been exposed a bit in the Chelsea game. This is a team that are maybe pretenders as opposed to contenders, but this game really proved that they have the talent to be up there in the top three, to challenge for that title, especially with Chelsea and Arsenal having Champions League play throughout this stage of the season, and both those teams should make it deep into the tournament. So United have a little bit of an edge there, not having to play those Champions League games. And I think they've showed in this game that they have the talent to compete, especially when you look at, the type of game that Zalem had. Katie Zalem was just immense as that defensive center mid that kind of controlled the game, but also in set pieces was so important for Manchester United, exposing that flaw in Arsenal's system. So Arsenal go up 2-1. It was kind of one of those things where United had a lot of possession, a lot of the game, go up 1-0, and then it kind of woke Arsenal up. Arsenal come back, they tie the game 1-1, they take it over into the 80th minute, and it looked like it was over. It looked like this was Arsenal kind of taking over the game and just putting it to bed. But not long after that, United get a corner. Millie Turner is able to put it into the net. Then in stoppage time, Zalem sends in a corner again, and andAlessia Russo puts it in to make it 3-2. Manchester United at the death in stoppage time. Give them a win on the road at Arsenal. Tie them for the top of the table. So the top three are all tied on points, with Arsenal edging out Chelsea and then Manchester United on goal differential. That's going to be important because Arsenal do have just a pretty big goal differential difference advantage compared to both Chelsea and United. United are very far back in terms of goal differential, but it's going to be an exciting season. We now see that all three of those teams are going to go at it head to head and drop points off each other. So it becomes so critically important to now beat those teams below you on the table. So if you're Arsenal, you slip up against United. If you're United, you slip up against Chelsea. You have to stay perfect. That's where that pressure gets ratcheted up, right? Because you have to stay perfect now against those teams below you in the table. We'll have some more games tomorrow for the Super League as the World Cup kicks off as well. I'm going to try to do these videos where I kind of talk about both the World Cup, talk about the Super League, and just kind of let's keep that conversation going. Talking about the World Cup, let's go into Qatar versus Ecuador as we kick off the 2022 totally normal Winter World Cup. Completely normal. So this game, of course, kicks off from the totally not problematic Qatar. Infantino may have another unhinged tirade before then. I'm not sure. I would not put it past him, but holy fuck, that guy's a mess right now. It's like he feels like everything's kind of crumbling around him and he just has to, tweet through it as Elon Musk does. Just drive right into the skid, When things are going bad, just make things as worse as possible. That's always my thought process, so that's a successful mindset. But, okay, so getting away from that, Qatar is really going to surprise people because I think people look at Qatar as a nation, as a small nation, but their football team is actually quite competent, quite good. They played in the Gold Cup. They were invited by CONCACAF to play. Oh my God. They were invited by CONCACAF to play in the Gold Cup, and they actually looked pretty good. They had this bonkers game against Panama that was 4-3 that both teams were just kind of running headfirst into each other. They played the U.S. pretty well, actually. And not that, whatever, we don't need to get into that right now, but they played the U.S. pretty well. And I think they're going to throw teams off because they just have had so much time to play together with all those players playing in the Qatar League together, with the amount of friendlies that they've been able to play together, just with how their schedule lined up, both the league schedule and how the World Cup schedule lined up. They had plenty of time to play together. And when you take players that, are pretty competent, have a good skill level, you give them that much time to play together. It's why club teams can usually beat international teams, because they just have that much more familiarity. So you look at the Ecuador team, who have been draw merchants, drawing Argentina for their final game in the CONMEBOL qualifying that brought them up into World Cup qualifying places. They're a really good team too, and I think it's going to show the strength of CONMEBOL that the fourth place team that kind of had to sneak into World Cup qualifying is going to go head-to-head against a team like Qatar, who, of course, had the spot given to them, but have shown that they're a quality football side over the last couple of years anyway. So it's a real interesting matchup. Ecuador are a young, promising team, and when you talk about playing on this stage against a team who's playing at home for home pride, it could go one or two ways. Ecuador are either going to seize this opportunity and put on a good game, have one of those World Cup moments that you can only get on the highest stage, or they're going to falter a bit to Qatar. But I think that these two teams, with kind of all of those extenuating circumstances, are pretty even. I think this one is probably a 1-1 draw. Ecuador have a lot of draws if you go look back their fixtures through CONMEBOL, through all of their kind of international friendlies. A lot of 1-1s, a lot of 2-2s, a lot of 0-0s in there, and I think that's probably what happens here. A 1-1 draw. I think both teams, are going to play a little bit expansive. I could see this going any number of ways. Some goals will be scored here, but I think that 1-1 draw, with everything that's been going on in Qatar so far, with the height of the situation, with the kind of theatrics that always go before the World Cup kickoff, I think it's going to be a nice high competition draw. I don't think it's going to be a boring game whatsoever, but I think it'll end 1-1, and this group isn't going to be kind on either of those teams. Senegal, even though they're missing Sadio Mane now, are still just such a good team. Everyone's kind of writing Senegal off without Sadio Mane, but that's a really good team. And of course, when you're talking about just like the big dogs of that group, the Netherlands are probably a team that is up there in the favorites to win. So if I'm looking at it, Qatar, the home team, Ecuador are going to surprise some people as well, but I don't think either of them have the quality to upend either Senegal or the Netherlands, even with the weirdness of playing in Qatar. I think that's going to be pretty straightforward. So that's what's to look out for tomorrow. Don't bet on it and cite me, because I don't want to be on the hook for that. But if I were a betting man, I'd bet on a 1-1 draw. That's just kind of my outlook watching both these teams play a little bit recently and just kind of going through some of the stats. So let me know how you think that Ecuador-Qatar game is going to go down in the comments below. Let me know who you think is going to win the Women's Super League and how it's looking right now. I'd love to see that. Content for tomorrow, we're going to preview some more games. We're going to go over Ecuador and Qatar. We're going to review the Women's Super League again. Next week, of course, we'll keep those Qatar previews going. We'll also talk about the Women's Champions League that's going to be picking back up. And we might have some MLS and NWSL free agency news on the other side of the week. Let's hope. Dubina's got to sign sometime, right? All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching, hanging out with me today. We will talk very, very soon. If this is your first time seeing this video, make sure that you subscribe. I've been picking up some subscribers lately. I would love it to have you along for the ride. And as always, folks, have a good day.